introducing equivalent fractions, you want to emphasize how we can rename numbers to have the same value. So, for example, starting with whole numbers, we can rename 2010s as having the same value as 200. So just like how we do it with place value and whole numbers, we can do the same with fractions. When beginning equivalent fractions, my favorite way is to just give students unit fractions first, and then they have to find fractions that are the same value to these unit fractions, and just have them explore. Don't tell them the equivalency right away. Just have them kind of explore and see which fractions have the same value and that they are the same size. So here I can see that 2/5 and 1/3 are not equivalent. You can have them record their findings in a T-chart for using examples, non-examples. I have this activity linked below. So for example, here I found that 1/3 was not equivalent to 2/5. However, if I keep kind of exploring, I see that 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. And again, just have them explore, definitely have them write down those halves because we really want them to be comfortable with those halfway point benchmarks. To represent equivalent fractions, a great way is to use these fraction strips, as well as I also have a paper for using a number line to find equivalent fractions. So if they see here, I have the one whole on top, and I would actually have your students fill in all of these fractions. So for example, I have one whole and have them fill in each fraction bar with the unit fraction. I went ahead and filled in just a few. So here I can see I have 1/3 here. And if I look at this line and I just kind of follow it down towards my other fractions, I can see that 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. And it's also equivalent to 3/9. Now here they could start to notice a pattern that my denominators are kind of skip counting. So following this pattern, I can go ahead and write my next equivalent fraction, which would be 4/12. Then again, 5/15. We could show the same using the unit fraction of 1/4. 1/4 is right here. If I follow that line down, I see that 2/8 is also equivalent to 1/4. Following that pattern, if I keep skip counting, I can just keep going and writing all of these equivalent fractions. Using a number line for equivalent fractions is another great way to kind of visualize how equivalent fractions have the same value because they are at the same point on a number line. So I'll use halves as my example first. Starting with the half, I'm going to go ahead and cut each partition this into, I'm going to cut my halves into half. And now I have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. I'm going to cut those in half again. And now I have how many equal parts? Now I have 8ths. 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8. And as I'm doing this, the fractions that are stacked on top of each other are showing that equivalent value. 6/8, 7/8, and an 8/8. You can keep doing this, so on and so on. Basically, what we're showing is that we're doing this and we're cutting fractions in half. We're simply just renaming this fraction. A half is equivalent to 2/4 is equivalent to 4/8. The value is not changing. Again, we're just renaming that fraction. So a prerequisite skill for finding common denominators is being able to find the equivalent fraction. So if I start with 1/3 and I want to find an equivalent fraction with my denominator of 9, we can use the identity property to essentially find the equivalent fraction of thirds to ninths. If I were to multiply by 3/3, again, this 3/3 is 1. And when I'm multiplying by 1, the value of my fraction is not changing due to the identity property. So if I see when I multiply 1 times 3, I do get 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So therefore, 1/3 is equivalent to 3/9. Because again, when I multiply by, I could have also multiplied by 2/2 to get another equivalent fraction. So again, when I multiply by 1, it's not changing the value, we're just finding an equivalent fraction. Also, when we are simplifying fractions, that's also just finding equivalent fractions as well. When we divide by the greatest common factor in this case is 3, we're simplifying it down to the equivalent fraction of 1/2. So being able to find equivalent fractions is very important, and it's a foundational skill for when students start to add and subtract fractions as well as compare fractions when they need to understand what the common denominator is.